Love X Revenge. The dust rose in slow spirals as the last wagon rolled past the ranch gate, its wooden wheels groaning under the weight of strangers, hopes and disappointments. The auction had ended hours ago, yet silence still hung heavy over the plains, broken only by the distant lowing of cattle and the rhythmic creak of an old windmill. Caleb Hart stood alone by the fence, his hands resting on rough wood polished smooth by years of waiting. He had never planned to buy a wife. Yet here he was, staring down the long road that had delivered her into his life like an unexpected storm. Earlier that morning, the town square had been crowded with voices, laughter, bargaining, and whispers. The annual settlement auction had always been a practical affair: land parcels, livestock, equipment, and occasionally contracts of work or guardianship. But everyone knew the unspoken truth: sometimes, desperate people made desperate offers. Caleb had come to buy cattle. Instead, he saw her. She stood apart from the others, her posture straight despite exhaustion, her dress worn but clean, her gaze sharp and unyielding. People avoided her eyes, as though her presence reminded them of something they preferred to forget. Her name was Alara Moore. When the auctioneer called out her situation, a woman burdened by debts not of her making, threatened with eviction and legal trouble, the crowd reacted with uncomfortable murmurs. No one stepped forward. Sympathy was cheaper than action. Until Caleb raised his hand. The moment felt unreal. His voice sounded distant to his own ears when he named his offer. He would cover her debts, her legal fees, and provide her a place on his ranch. In return, she would sign a binding contract of partnership, half practical, half symbolic. The town interpreted it the way towns always did: a rancher buying himself a wife. Alara did not thank him. She walked toward him after the crowd dispersed, her boots crunching over gravel, her expression unreadable. "You paid for me," she said quietly. "Now do it. Don't pretend this was charity." Her words struck harder than any insult. Caleb had grown up believing in fairness. His father had taught him that the land gave nothing freely, and neither should people. But standing before Alara, he realized he had crossed a line he did not fully understand. "I didn't buy you," he replied, his voice low. Her lips curved in a faint, bitter smile. "That's what everyone says." The ride to the ranch was silent. The plains stretched endlessly, gold and rust beneath a vast sky, the horizon trembling in heat. Alara sat stiffly in the wagon beside him, her hands folded in her lap, her gaze fixed forward. Caleb tried to imagine what she thought of him. A stranger, a rescuer, or something worse. The ranch was quiet when they arrived. Wide fields rolled toward distant hills, fences cutting neat lines across the land. The house stood sturdy and weathered, built by hands that valued function over beauty. "This is where you'll stay," he said. Alara stepped down from the wagon and looked around slowly. Her eyes lingered on the barns, the corrals, the grazing cattle. She seemed less impressed than cautious. "So," she said, "what exactly did you expect in return?" Caleb hesitated. "Work, partnership, respect." She laughed softly, without humor. "Respect can't be bought." Days turned into weeks. Alara proved to be everything Caleb had not anticipated. She rose before dawn, learned the rhythms of the ranch, mastered tasks that had taken him years to perfect. She was sharp with numbers, fearless with animals, and unafraid to challenge him when she believed he was wrong. At first, their conversations were practical and guarded. "You're wasting water on the north pasture," she told him one evening. "It's always been that way," he replied. "That doesn't make it right." He stared at her, surprised by her certainty. Slowly, the ranch began to change. So did Caleb. He found himself noticing small things. The way Alara hummed when she worked, the way her eyes softened when she spoke to injured animals, the quiet sadness that sometimes crossed her face when she thought no one was watching. But Alara never forgot how she had arrived. Neither did the town. Rumors spread faster than prairie fire. People whispered that Caleb had trapped her with money, that Alara had traded freedom for comfort, that their partnership was a bargain built on imbalance. Alara heard everything. One evening, after a long day of work, she stood on the porch as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in deep crimson. Caleb joined her with 2 cups of coffee. "You don't owe me anything," he said suddenly. She did not turn. That's easy for you to say. He waited. You think money solves everything, she continued quietly. You think because you paid my debts, you erased my past. I never thought that, but everyone else does. Silence stretched between them. I'm not staying here forever, she added. I'm staying until I can stand on my own. Caleb nodded slowly. That's fair. For the first time, her expression softened, not with gratitude, but with something closer to trust. Yet peace never lasts long on the frontier. One afternoon, a stranger arrived at the ranch. He rode a black horse, his posture confident, his clothes too polished for hard labor. He introduced himself as Marcus Hale, a businessman from the city. He had come for Alara. Caleb watched from the barn as Alara listened to Marcus, her face tightening with every word. He's offering me a job, she told Caleb later that night. Real work, real pay, no contracts tied to favors. Caleb felt something sharp twist inside him. You should go, he said after a long pause. Alara studied him carefully. Do you mean that? Yes. She looked away. Everyone leaves eventually. The days that followed were heavy with unspoken tension. Alara continued working as usual, but something had shifted. Her laughter was rarer. Her gaze often drifted toward the horizon. Marcus returned again and again, each time more persuasive, more impatient. You don't belong here, he told her one afternoon within Caleb's hearing. You're too smart to stay tied to a rancher who bought you. The words burned. That night, a storm rolled across the plains. Thunder shook the house, rain hammered the roof, and wind tore at the fences. Alara stood in the doorway, her coat in her hands. I'm leaving tomorrow, she said. Caleb felt the world narrow to her silhouette against the lightning. If that's what you want, he replied. She stepped closer. Don't you care? He met her gaze. I care enough not to cage you. Her eyes widened slightly. You paid for me, she whispered. But you never tried to own me. Caleb said nothing. The storm raged outside, but something else was breaking inside the house. The next morning, Marcus returned with a wagon. Alara walked toward it slowly. Caleb watched from the porch, his hands clenched at his sides.